Welcome to another episode of Spirit of an Athlete. I'm your host, Amanda Smith. And on this episode, I speak with Cindi Miller, who's a former Division I volleyball player and coach, who specializes now in helping athletes with their mental game. She has become a therapist for athletes specifically, which I absolutely love. In this episode, we talk about boundaries. How can an athlete better instill boundaries? How can they learn how to get more talkative with their coaches and help establish boundaries? One of my favorite examples is when you have a private coach and your regular team coach, how to get the two to either work together, or which one do you listen to when it comes to the skills that you're learning from them? It's a very tricky subject that I know several of my athletes are experiencing, but also I'm sure several of your athletes are experiencing as well. So I hope you enjoy this episode with Cindi Miller on boundaries. Cindi Miller, thank you so much for being on Spirit of an Athlete with me and sharing about boundaries and mental health around boundaries. Okay, first question right out the box. I like to just dive right in. When it comes to boundaries, you were a Division I volleyball player at UNC Asheville. Was there a scenario that you experienced or you witnessed your teammates experiencing that could have used a little better boundaries?
Yeah, I thought of a scenario as soon as I knew that question was coming. And my experience was through an injury, and I had torn an abdominal muscle. And yeah, it was intense. It's very intense. However, this was my sophomore year. I was getting consistent playing time, like getting the most kills, starting to really make myself and my name known, and went up for an attack and just kind of felt it. Like I genuinely felt it happen in a match. But I come from the regimen, I guess, of my athletics of suck it up and power through. I didn't know how to advocate for myself at all because I genuinely think I wanted to play too. Like I was like, I'm getting to play. I'm getting all these, as an underclassman. And so one of the situations that occurred around setting boundaries is I was telling my coach that I was at like a pain level of, on a scale of 10, I was like 7, 8. Like I was up there. And she was like, well, do you think that you can still play and like tip or not do that, or we can take you out of serving? Like she was really trying to be flexible, but I couldn't even like cough, sneeze, go to the bathroom, like roll out of bed. Like it impacted everything in my life. Now in hindsight, I'm like, what was I thinking? I should have taken the season off probably. However, where the conflict was in the boundary setting was like, she kind of convinced me that I could keep playing, or but it wasn't for my own benefit. It was because people would know that there's something wrong. So then they would take less pressure off of me, or they wouldn't focus on me, that sort of thing. It was all about like the wins and losses. And I had told my athletic trainer I was at a 10. Like I'm 10 out of 10 pain. Like I cried from like I can remember one match to another. We were driving to the next, like played in 2 days. Like we were driving to the next match, and I remember crying like the whole way there. And hindsight, what I could have done is say like, no, I'm not playing. Like this is too painful. And then the boundary around like the convincing of, but again, at the time I had no idea. I didn't have the insight. I didn't have the knowledge that I could advocate for myself at all through an injury. And then it actually came to a head because the athletic trainer saw my coach put me in and was like, she's at a 10 out of 10. Like, what are you doing? And she was like, she told me she was at a 7 and she could play. So I created a fight between them basically because I didn't want to tell her that I like couldn't play, didn't want to tell him that I was fine because I wasn't. I wanted the pain meds. I wanted the icy hot. I wanted all of the things, right? I wanted the stem machine. I wanted all of that. And so that was one thing that came up for me like immediately when I saw that question, because I would have taken the time off, because I still to this day, 15 years later, still have issues with this muscle. I went to a massage therapist. She was like, "Did you
No.
have an injury?" And I was like, "Yeah, a long time ago." And so I don't know if I would have taken time off, if it would have healed better or differently. I don't know that, but it's probably, the chances are probably pretty high. And so that was the situation with me. And I don't know if you want me to answer
No, that
teammates
covers
too.
it. No. I mean, the teammates got to witness this. Were you in a leadership role
Mhm.
in your sophomore year? I'm
Mhm.
guessing. Oh, you were.
I was. Yeah, I was named floor captain. So we had seniors who were like team captains that went up to the ref and stuff, but I was the only one playing six rotation, so I was the floor captain.
Okay. All right. So
Mhm.
your teammates witnessing that you're in pain, were
Mhm.
they advocating for you?
To me. To me.
Of
Like, "You
course,
should
but
take
not to
time
the
off," because
coaches.
no, because I was, like, crying between games, and then I'd, "Okay, time to get in the locker room and start again," because like I said, I really, really wanted to take that opportunity that I had been given, and it potentially impacted, and it's really kind of interesting because it was just a couple months ago that I reconnected with that coach, and we talked about it and how
Oh,
confused she was because of how much I minimized it. She was like, "If I would have known you were in that much pain, I never would have played you." Like, she felt like I was minimizing it to her enough that I was like, "I'm fine. I'll be fine." And so it's something that has lasted, like a moment in my career that had lasted 15 years.
okay, we gotta dig a little deeper here. So, did you feel like you had the leeway to say, "Yes, I'm injured. I need to take a break," or did you feel, "No, I need to stay in," and was it because of the coaches? Was it because of the team? Was it because of I mean, you were at this great place of play, this level of play that you were
Mhm.
like, "This is what I've worked for."
Mhm.
Was it
Yeah.
a combination of all of those things?
Yeah, I was gonna say D, all of the above.
Right?
So I was conflicted when I was advocating. Like, I genuinely felt like I could suck it up and power through. I
Mhm.
genuinely felt like I was at a 10 out of 10 pain, but I've never broken a bone in my body. I've never given birth. I've never any of these things that probably are
Mhm.
more painful. And it was a 10 out of 10 for me. And then my teammates really did look for me to be a leader on the court and that sort of thing. And I was like, how can I do that from the bench? I was not a bench person. I did
Mhm.
not do well if I was ever on the bench. So that was a part of it that I really, um, in again, hindsight, I keep saying that, setting the boundary of not playing. I should have taken a couple weekends off. I should have not played for about 2 weeks. We were also in conference, so every
Mhm.
match mattered. Like, all of these stakes built up, built up, built up, that I can't even fathom the amount of like pain medication and different types of treatment I was doing multiple times a day so that I could keep going.
Oh, man.
Mm.
Okay. So, what ab which ab is it? I can I
Yeah. My lower left.
lower left, so
Um,
transverse abdominis.
uh-huh. Yep.
Have you had kids?
No, I have not. No, I have not.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would definitely play a role in that.
Mm-hmm.
15 years
Yeah.
later, you're still experiencing the pain of this.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Uh, the mental aspect of it, or the how it's impacting me?
Both?
Like, physically. So when it happens, it's when I'm active. So when I was like fresh out of college, what I would notice was like specifically jump roping would
Mm.
cause me pain.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know if it was like the card, if you get like a side stitch, that's what would happen, but in my ab, because there was scar tissue, because I ripped it off the bone. Like, I had ultrasounds because I thought it could be a tumor. Like, it was insane how horrible it, like, and how much of an event it was. And so now it's more, I can feel it just in certain motions when I'm doing certain ab workouts, when I'm using my legs. So I can even feel it because I feel pretty confident in my squat ability. And so I feel it in my core a lot. and
Mhm.
I will feel sore in that spot on like heavy lift days. And so it's just an interesting reminder. And then, like I said, recently had a massage therapist who knew nothing about me, was like, "Did you have an injury here?" It's like, "You can still
Mhm.
feel this 15 years later?" I'm like, yeah, I did. How'd you know that? She's like, "You've got scar tissue. Like, you've got stuff in there." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." So today, now it's just, and I do see it as like, it doesn't hinder me, it doesn't impact my day to day anymore.
Good.
But it is just this
Okay.
constant reminder, which is funny because I talk about boundaries, and this is a constant reminder of my poor boundaries that I had in college. So that's kind of how I feel about it now.
I can totally relate to this. My senior year of college and very long college career, and I broke my bottom rib, the
Mm.
floating rib, and I was a pitcher, and so my arm was constantly going into that rib. And at one point, my coach was like, "Okay, you cannot be on the mound if you have tears streaming down your face. We're gonna have to not play you this game." And it's your senior year. You're just like, "Oh my gosh, this can't be happening to me right now." Yours happened during your sophomore year. Did you come back after?
I never took time off.
You
I
just
played through the
played through it.
season. And then at the end of the season, I did take time off where everybody else was getting back into open gyms, lifting. That's when I did take a break. I took about a 2-month break, rehabbed, did lots of like core work and that sort of thing. And now, when I was coaching volleyball, this is my second season not coaching, but we would incorporate core work every single practice at the end of practice, because now I am like technique and such with hitting and the way you arch your back. And if you use your back more than your arm and all this stuff, I am very specific in my coaching around it, because it was like the most painful thing I had ever experienced. And it's very odd, right? It's not something you can see, right? Like the broken bones, like a lot of injury. So, like, how much does it hurt? Well, your arm's not dangling. So, does it really hurt that bad? You know what I mean? You have to, like, kind of like
Yes.
migraines or different types of like inner pain. And so I did take 2 months off and then came back into the spring season. And it did still bother me occasionally, but never to that extent.
So how did all of this play out in what you do now with athletes? Besides the physical and having to do the crunches, what about the mental side?
Yeah, it shows up a lot in, I feel like I have a very unique perspective when I work with athletes, because I was not only a player, but I was also a high level coach and coached at a Division 1 school. And so I see both sides of like, but we really need to win because that's what we're supposed to do. And like, but I care about your physical and mental health and overall well being. And so with athletes I work with, a lot of them tend to have mental health struggles. And that's definitely not visible, right? Like, that's definitely
Mhm.
not something you can see as an injury. And so we really talk about, and for lack of a better term, it's kind of easy to describe as like pros and cons. Like, why are you playing? What are you doing? How can you communicate how you're actually feeling? Don't diminish that without saying, like, "Oh, poor me, like you need to cater to me," which is what I think a lot of people think when you ask for like an excuse or to sit out, or you're seen as weak societally, socially, from a sport perspective. And so
Mhm.
I really focus in on how to communicate what you're feeling while acknowledging the potential outcomes or the potential downfall of the team, right? Like, if yes, I acknowledge that this is probably going to suck. This is poor timing and I can't perform right now. Like, kind of that very cliche therapist, like both and two things can be true at one time kind of perspective.
Right? Yes. Both and is so powerful. I
Yes.
think
Yes.
that's one of the things that when it comes to athletes, they don't realize, like, you can not feel good and still be happy at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Those 2 things
Mm-hmm.
can exist. And which
Yes.
plays out in that aspect of mental challenges and mental
Mm-hmm.
health. As a coach, you're coaching your players around mental health. Are there other at where you coach, are there other support members that you pull in to help with that piece of the puzzle? Or is it all on you as a coach?
That other support person is me. for
Yeah,
other
that's
teams and such. So I'm a mental health coach as well, like the therapy side of things. So they did create a space where I was running weekly trainings on different types of struggles that athletes deal with, and so yeah, my team's always got the most of it because I would constantly be stopping practice to be like, how do we think that sounded? Or like not even about volleyball at all. It would never be rarely would be about volleyball. I'd hear a snide comment or I'd see something happen. Like, okay, why do we think this is going on? I also encourage my athletes to come to me and tell me if they're having a crap day. And I told them up front, I said, I'm not going to be easy on you when you have a crap day. This is a time for you to be able to disconnect from that crap day, but I'm also not going to ride you or get on to you if I see you like moping or kind of head down and sad. Because I know, like, if you failed a test, it's going to be hard to get that out of your mind, during practice, but
mhm.
you can. So I'm not going to take it easy on you. Again, both and. I'm not going to take it easy on you, and I'm also not going to like ride you or make you run for your mood.
I love that. Okay, so at the university you're at, you are the mental health support. You're also the volleyball coach. Are there any other mental health support people, or is it just
Where
you?
Where I was, at East Carolina, they hired a mental health counselor while I was there, like one of the last years that I was there. When I was in school to become a counselor, they hired someone. So it was perfect timing because there was a nice overlap. And the person they hired, and what I really actually appreciate, is they hired a mental health counselor versus a sports psychologist. And I have nothing against sports psychology. However, it is focused solely on performance, and we know that athletes struggle with so much more as the general population, but it's enhanced because you have time management, you have expectations, you have win loss expectations, you have 4 hours a day practice, like all of these things. So I think there should be both. If
Mhm,
universities could afford it and make it into their budget, but so they had a mental health counselor that they could go to that came over to the athletics complex once or twice a week and would be there all day, and they could sign up just like slotted times. And
mhm.
that took a lot of relief off of me for sure.
That's fabulous. I love
Yes.
hearing this, and this was a Division I school, so they had the
Mm-hmm.
resources to be able to bring that kind of stuff in. I was just recording an episode with Natalie Graves, who's also a mental performance coach, and we were talking about this exact thing, like,
Mm-hmm.
what do the schools really need to have in place? And the
Mm-hmm.
fact that that university brings the mental health professional over to the athletic department is a big
Mm-hmm.
deal. It's interesting to hear that you would prefer not a sports psychologist. Is the
Yes.
person who's coming over, and of course this is a couple of years ago, so
Mm-hmm.
draw back as much as you can. If you don't know,
Yeah.
that's totally okay. Did that professional that came in understand sports and understand what a student athlete has to go through?
Well, this is a reason that I became a therapist because there weren't enough people who understand sport. This person did have experience in sports, not to an extensive level, not specific training to, but she was at all of our events prior to, like, she enjoyed sport and got to see and experience the athletes because I'm pretty sure she was an adjunct professor as well in the like counseling program. And so yes, there was more than usual, I think, because I am absolutely 100% on board that that's why I became a therapist, because I would be like, this is too much for me as a coach. And then they'd be like, well, where do I go?
Right?
Because my old
You're
therapist just
that.
told me to quit if I was this miserable. And quitting's not an option because I do love it, right? Both things can be true. How many times can I say this on the recording?
Right?
That you can be really frustrated, burnout, tired of it, sick of your teammates, and still love the sport, and sometimes still love your teammates and love the game. And so hearing like, well, just quit, or I don't understand. Why do you have to practice for 4 hours? Like, because you do, because I have to. That's the
Mhm.
requirement. This is my job. And some people don't understand that.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that N Natalie and I were talking about was you've really gotta have somebody come in that understands what it's like to be both a student and an athlete in this university's culture, and that
Mm-hmm.
last piece is really that's a huge driver. They have to understand what the culture is. The culture of, say, Alabama is
Mhm.
completely different than the culture at UNC.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and the
So,
expectations and yeah, and I have started to dabble in looking into like the credentials and what have you of the programs, and some colleges have their athletes sign an ROI for their coaches so they can share what's coming up. That's supposed to be a confidential space. And so
mhm,
then they stopped going. They're like, I'm not doing that. And then why would I go if they're going to be pressuring me? Because that person is paid by the university to experience success or to create success. So it's just all sticky right now. I think we're
mhm,
still learning about how to, and to come back around to our topic, to set boundaries with what the expectation is for a mental health support. You're not just trying to help them win matches or games. You're helping them as humans, and that sometimes gets overlapped too.
yeah, yes. This is something
Mhm.
I'm starting to learn and witness within the professional level as well. So, NBA, some of the players have gone out and hired their own personal
Mhm.
trainers or physical therapists to
Yeah.
help them get back into the game because the trainers and the therapists within the organization, they have one goal, win games. And
Mhm.
they're going to make decisions based off of their career, their personal career, not the player's career. So yeah, it's a very gray, sticky, ugly
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah, it
Okay,
really is.
back to the boundaries. All right,
Yeah.
I have a scenario that I want to run past you and see what you think about this because you are the expert in boundaries. So, I have this player who I coach her privately in pitching lessons, and this is super common. This happens a lot. And then she has her own coach on her team who's also a pitching coach trying to help her with her pitching skills. And our information is conflicting. And she's a youth athlete. So, how do we teach her how to set boundaries and respect what her body needs for the particular movements that she's doing, which is a very explosive, intricate, complex movement?
Mhm. Yeah. And I appreciate you adding the nuance of youth, because I think there was a little bit of there like, at what age? And immediately what comes to mind is that it's completely appropriate for a parent to intervene. I think that at that age, there is a power dynamic, both with you and the youth, and the other coach and the youth, that makes them afraid of disappointing either one.
Yep.
And unfortunately, in our culture and world, we don't teach emotional intelligence. We don't teach assertive and effective communication, because ideally, I would be like, you can advocate for yourself, you 13-year-old or whatever, but they don't have the language yet for that. And so, the first thing that I would do would probably be to encourage the athlete to express the pain that it is causing. This hurts my body. And if the coach is like, "Whoa, it's just because your personal coach is telling you to do it the other way," because it hurts my body, and really focuses on that, because I think sometimes people can use personal coaches or outside coaches as a like, I'm too good for what you have to tell me. I absolutely think that exists.
Yes.
But there's times where you are being a one-on-one coach because you know your stuff and it's effective. And so for the athlete, I would set the boundary of just stating, this hurts and I'm not going to do it. But they impact playing time. At the end of the day, I know now in 2024, they can play travel ball. They can, if they don't get playing time in the high school or middle school, or say vice versa, that's okay. They don't have to jump schools, they don't have to transfer, anything like that. But if they're getting less playing time, but they're developing on the side with you, they are learning how to be a good teammate. They're learning how to maybe focus their energy on hitting. That's all that they're getting reps in, because you're not allowed to pitch on our at practice anymore because you're not doing it my way. And so I really always look at like, what are the other factors you can focus on, instead of what, like, again, woe is me, this is terrible, I hate this. Utilizing it as kind of like a stepping stone to what other areas of my game can I improve upon. And that's the boundary, that's the emotional boundary. And so I also talk a lot about like self and internal boundaries around what I'm going to let impact me. And again, teenagers don't have that yet. They don't have all
Mhm.
of those skills yet. So it needs to be taught. And a lot of times people are like, I can do that. I can say that. Well, it makes me really sad. Okay, but like, let's explore why it makes you really sad, because you don't want to disappoint, because you're a people pleaser, because you have to do this thing because that's all you've been known for. Could come up with like 45 different reasons why. Well, I have to, right? And so boundaries sometimes are internal. What this person has to say, I'm going to take what is good and leave what is not. I'm going to know that it's not good for me, and I'm going to maintain the skill that I'm doing. If that coach presented some research and some professional athletes that are following their way of doing things, then maybe it's time for a meeting of all the parties, because, okay, that's like making it more even. And so when you add it in youth, I would definitely say like the parents can definitely intervene at that time. I think when I coached 15-year-olds, they were to tell me if they weren't coming to practice because of school, I need to study, or I guess that's really kind of it. And then parents could tell me if they were sick, if the car didn't start, if like that sort of thing. Or
Mhm.
the kid had to ask me about playing time, but the parent is absolutely allowed to tell me, like, hey, she's not telling you, kind of like me, she's not telling you, but like her knee's really been bothering her, but she doesn't want to disappoint you. Parents, right? So when we look at
Mhm.
like pain, injuries, and really when the athlete has tried to advocate for self, then the next step is to incorporate the parents.
What does this look like at the collegiate level?
Collegiate level, I think parents are too involved, so I would take that back a little bit. And honestly, I think that at the collegiate level, having a personal coach is not as effective, in that you're competing and practicing and lifting weights and doing all the things so much that anything above and beyond what you are already doing could potentially be too much, lead to burnout, lead to overuse injuries, like that sort of thing. And and so I think that from my perspective, that's a beautiful place to start communicating. Hey, this is how I learned it, and you want me to do it this different way. Now the coach may be like, yeah, but I was taught when I was a coach that there's a like inverse you. Like you get into the system of the new coach, you're gonna suck for a while. Your freshman year, first couple of months in season, and that can be really frustrating to who were superstars, right? And then you're
Mhm.
coming into a program that does things a certain way, and what have you. So again, if it's just I don't want to do it that way because I'm not very good at it, versus that way really hurts, or that way feels like I'm going to get hit in the face, or whatever the thing might be, and which is discernment. And a lot of grown adults don't have discernment of like injury versus pain, injury versus soreness, like all of those things. So which is where it's important, an assistant coach or a mental health, like a performance coach or that sort of thing, can athletic trainers are huge in this role, being able to
Mhm.
say, well, I think it's just because your body's never done that before, or yeah, you've got some inflammation and that's not going to be okay. And so that I would expect the athlete to advocate for themselves a lot more than a high school or middle school athlete.
From an age timeline perspective, in your opinion, where do we start to transition the athlete into advocating for themselves?
In my experience, 16, 17. 16, they have they're legally allowed to get behind a 2,000-pound vehicle to drive with other people and all the things. And so if you have the capability to do that, you have the capability to speak up for yourself. And not that like people can start driving at 15, some people don't get their license, but if we think that 16-year-olds are cognitively able to assess for traffic, stoplights, is there a car coming, is that an animal in the crosswalk, is that a human, then they are absolutely capable of advocating for themselves.
I love that. Okay. It's interesting to think about that from a driver's license perspective because there's some states that still allow drivers at much younger ages, 14 years
Mhm.
old, 15
Yeah.
years old. It's still like, okay, they're responsible
Mhm.
for a vehicle and all of the other vehicles around them. Yeah,
Yes.
it makes
Yeah.
sense. Now you need to advocate for yourself because what if you get pulled over?
Yes, and 16, I think too, because they can have their license. I mean, kids are getting phones when they're like 9, 10, or younger now, but,
Yes.
like, that is when most people used to that was the time they got the phone because you were driving, like, it's safe, like, that's a great thing about cell phones, and so they also are less likely to be on mom and dad's email, so they get emails to their own personal email and to know if practices are changing or that sort of thing, or they're driving
Mhm.
themselves to practice. So if parents drop their kids off late, like I'm not going to punish them because it's their parents' fault. I
Parent.
can't make their parents come in and run lines or have to sit out a first set or, things like that. And when they are in charge of their time, that's when that responsibility starts to kick in. And a lot of the times it's an independence thing too. On the other side of things, they don't want their parents involved as much. They don't want all of that. They want that separation.
That starts at 12. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes,
But
yes, yes.
it's those building blocks, right? So if independence starts at 12, they start to learn how to be independent until they're 16 when they can finally be responsible for driving their own car or a
Mhm.
car.
Yeah.
And then from 16 to 18, parents are still involved. They're bridging that gap, helping the player in this case learn how to communicate with their coaches
Mhm.
and learn how to communicate with the trainers and anybody else and doctors, hopefully at that point.
Yeah.
And then by the time they're 18 and they're off on their own, they can handle it, we hope. But your
Yes.
experience is parents are showing up at the collegiate level to help support their children. Is that a
Yes.
separation thing? Is that like a I don't have full control over my kid anymore because they're away all the time, so now this is the one thing I can hold on to?
Potentially, and this current generation, and it totally, like, there are outliers, there are things the I think a pendulum swings on how close and attached parents and kids are, but in my experience right now, it's they are sending their best friend off to school, so they are missing their confidant, their person that they've been chatting
Mm,
with, the person that there are dads who live vicariously through their child and post when they get any of their stats or force the newspaper to write an article about them or things like that. That's a serious one that actually happened.
yep, no, I'm tracking that one.
Yep. And so I think that a lot of it, and my entire life goal is if I get a huge grant or I win the lottery, is implementing emotional intelligence in the third grade as a class. That's like my like
Yes,
dream. It's my dream.
I
And
love
why I say
that.
that here is that with our phones, with the quickness of our attention spans, with the quick fixes, with information being just kind of like given quickly, athletes, actually, I won't even say athletes, young adults do not know how to problem solve, do not know how to speak up for themselves because they've never had to, do not do not connect that they are handicapping themselves or like, by sharing everything with mom and dad because mom and dad aren't there to see the good things either. I give the same example when like your bestie complains about their boyfriend all the time and you're like, why don't you break up with them? Because I love them. Well, you never talk about the good things or
Right.
vice versa, right? So your parents are getting your side of the story only. And so
Mhm.
you call and say, like, my coach didn't play me. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that. I'm gonna call her. They call her and she's like, your daughter forgot her playing shoes. Like, what was I supposed to do? Let her play in her flip-flops? Like, again, another real situation that the daughter
Oh.
did not tell the parents that part that they messed up. Like, there's not as much
Mhm.
accountability when it's only one-sided a lot of the time.
Mm, mm.
I keep adding that caveat. It's not all, just, some, but it does exist.
Some. Exactly, yes. We cannot ever live in absolutes.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, Cindy. Yes! Thank you for sharing your insights as a coach, your insights as a mental health therapist, practitioner, professional. Holy cow. You dropped some I dropped mic 3 times. I am definitely grabbing those and putting them
Yes,
out there
great.
so people can hear this from someone who's been in all of those shoes. That's what
Mhm.
matters, is you've been in those shoes to be able to share from all of those perspectives, and I appreciate you beyond measure for that. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to share. It's definitely we could talk for another hour and a half because it's definitely something like that's I am so passionate about making that like bridging the gap between all of these different layers of sport.
It's beautiful. So where can people find you?
Yes, people can find me at Sports Food and Mental Health Instagram account, Facebook account as well. Facebook is not as popular as the Instagram anymore, but on there I have courses, I have managing anxiety, some leadership, how to be a good teammate is on there, and then I offer speaking engagements that can be found on there too. So just send me a message.
Heck yes. You guys, she has such a beautiful perspective because she's been in the coaching shoes, in the therapist shoes, in the athlete's shoes. She has been there.
Mhm.
Definitely
Yeah.
someone to have talk to your athletes, talk to your coaches, talk to your organizational leaders. Cindy, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me. This is a great conversation.
Thanks for listening to Spirit of an Athlete podcast. If you're struggling with your own debt issues and want more direction, you can get an initial body scan from Amanda at bodywhisperhealing.com. In 20 minutes, you can find out what's wrong, get clarity, map the path forward, and get on track to get back in your game. If this episode hits the spot, please let us know by rating, reviewing, and sharing it with a friend. Subscribe now to hear more inspiring stories from other female college athletes who overcame their health issues. Want more, Amanda? Get inspired by finding more at bodywhisperhealing.com.